Hello, Kai Hagen here. This is welcome to the first episode, if you want to call it that, of what I hope will be a regular series of audio and video podcasts with members of our community about local issues of concern to all of us. It's something I did for a long time on the radio station with an interview show for called Eye on Our Community. That aired up until I ran for office last time and had to stop. The difference is those were 2 hours long, and these will be fairly short. Another difference is I will probably be doing most of them during this time of stay at home and everything from my home office, but I'm out in the living room right now because I have to clean up my office. So but I didn't want to wait for that in order to have this conversation. So I'd like to welcome my guest for this short conversation is Ken Oldham. I've known Ken for a little while now. He is the president and CEO of the United Way of Frederick County. As many of you know, that's located at 7th and Market in the city of Frederick. He's a tireless advocate for working families, specifically the ALICE households. For those of you who don't know, he'll expand on that a little bit, but ALICE is an acronym for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed, and includes something around 40% of the households in our county and more in the city of Frederick. These are working families who don't have a sufficient income to offset the basic cost of living here in our community. So welcome, Ken. I appreciate you taking the time to do this and to be a guinea pig in my first effort.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
So, well, let's just jump right into it because we wanted to keep these things short, productive, and focused. If you would, during this difficult time, we are doing this and broadcasting, so to speak, in the middle of this COVID-19 crisis. It is a crisis. It's continuing to unfold. We literally are in the middle of it, and we don't really know how it's all going to play out, how bad it's going to be. But this is something that's been keeping you very busy in your advocacy for low-income working families. And if you could just share some thoughts and whatever else you'd like to, information about how low-income families are being affected by the virus, by the broader crisis in our community.
Sure. Well, I think there are some that might have said that before COVID hit, that we were pretty close to a state of crisis for our working families already. So you mentioned it earlier, the ALICE report that's produced by United Way and brought to Frederick County by United Way of Frederick County suggests that 40% of our households can't offset a basic cost of living in the county. In the city of Frederick, as you alluded to, that's over 50%. In Brunswick and Emmitsburg, you're looking at over 50% as well. These are communities, 50% of the community can't afford a basic cost of living. That is pretty close to a crisis. And that was before COVID hit. And now our households are being significantly affected by this situation. What we're seeing right now is that many of our low-income families, and by low income, you're looking at an individual making about $35,000 or less, or a family of four making about $65,000 or less. You're looking at these are the households that are most likely affected by this. So we're having massive layoffs. I've seen some data that says that we could peak at 30% unemployment. Most of these jobs are going to be in the retail, hospitality, and restaurant businesses. And those are concentrations of ALICE households. They're already struggling to get along. Now, with the increase and potential increase of unemployment, we are indeed in a state of crisis for these households. So we're very, very concerned about their ability to offset even any cost of living, much less a basic cost of living.
Well, I appreciate you making the broader point that not only are these people particularly vulnerable to this particular situation and the economic issues that are going to be with us for quite a long time, even after the virus problem has been put behind us at some point, an undetermined point in the future, but that this was already a significant concern in our community, that we were already dealing with a large part of our population that was living essentially paycheck to paycheck. And we're a car accident or a health problem or any number of other things away from financial disaster. I think whenever I talk to people, they're always stunned when they hear that percentage. Very few people, unless they've become familiar with the issue through your efforts and the Alice reports, fully appreciate that we're talking about 40, 50%, depending on what part of the county, of the residents who live in our county, who are part of our community. That's very substantial. And before we move on to another specific question, if you could, since the Alice report, you have a lot of really great information about that on the United Way website. Do you want to tell people how to find that? And I'll also note that any links that you mentioned will post with this so it's a live link when it's put up.
Sure. So the best place to get that information is at uwfrederick.org/Alice. And you reminded me of something that I meant to mention and I didn't, is that the Alice threshold, or the individuals who are on Alice, the number, when we say 39%, that is not a static number. So I remember about a year ago now, when the federal government shut down, and all of a sudden in this country, there were 600,000 more unemployed individuals temporarily, thankfully, and the Alice number suddenly shot up, because even federal government workers who make a decent living in most, if they don't have income coming, suddenly they're Alice. And we're seeing that in Frederick County and throughout the country, and right now we're seeing it, that we can see fluctuations in the number of Alice households right now. We're seeing many more than what we did even 2 weeks ago.
I'm sure, and potentially it could get a lot worse. And in addition to the potential of 20 or 30% unemployment rates nationally, or in some places better or worse, depending, you're going to have impacts well beyond those people, because they are consumers. They're spending money or not spending money in the community, and that'll affect a lot of other businesses as well. So even though you work on this issue all the time and are a tireless advocate and talking to people through and working through United Way programs to address it in a variety of ways, which we're not going to take the time to expand on in a lot of detail today, you have nevertheless created a specific, focused COVID-19 emergency relief campaign. So if you could, I'd like to spend most of the rest of the time that we have here letting you talk about that campaign specifically, what anybody can do to help, whether it's contributing or getting involved in some way, and for those who may be able to take advantage of, benefit from the campaign or the relief effort, how they would go about it.
Sure, great. Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. So when we started to see that the COVID situation was getting worse quickly, we're beginning to see things starting to happen, various announcements from government agencies, and we started to think about how a United Way, and a small United Way in a rural community, should respond. And instead of attempting to go it alone, we said, hey, look, we've been working for years with a community of philanthropic funders in this community, the Community Foundation in Frederick County, and a number of family foundations who've been working. We've been coordinating with those folks for years, and in many ways, we've been building up for this very moment of saying, okay, now we're in a point of crisis. How do we work together as a community to better solve problems in our community? So we put together a collaboration of philanthropic funders, and we started to work together very, very strategically on how we move this forward. So each of those philanthropic funders are bringing dollars to the table to help fill the needs in the community. We were challenged by that group of funders. We, United Way, were challenged by that group of funders to go take it to the community as a whole. So we developed the COVID-19 emergency relief campaign. We launched Friday before last, and to outstanding reception from our community. I can tell you, this has been amazing for us to see Frederick County respond to the effort, to say, okay, I'm in my own situation, but look, I still have room to help others in a point of need, and to help our Alice households and others struggling for a cost of living. So we launched 2 Fridays ago, and right now we're sitting at $161,000 raised. I anticipate that by the end of next week, we'll be closer to $200,000 raised. And Kai,
Wow.
we're getting ready to announce, and we will be announcing, if we haven't already by the time you broadcasted this, a 2-to-1 matching gift from a challenge grant from the Oshman Family Foundation to bring even more dollars into the community. So we're really delighted by this whole effort, and in a time when there are very serious concern about the welfare of our working families, it's wonderful to see the community respond in this way.
So if people want to contribute, we'll give them an opportunity, or you an opportunity, to talk a little bit about how they can do that later. But before we do, some folks might be interested in exactly how that money is being invested in the local community to target those particular needs and that part of our population.
Sure. So we have announced the release of $25,500 from the emergency relief campaign already. That was an initial immediate needs. This is what we have to do to solve problems right now. So we have a big challenge, and the challenge that we have is we're not exactly sure how governments are going to respond right now. We know that there's going to be some money from the federal government coming to households. We don't know exactly when that's going to arrive. We know there's going to be a response. There are various responses from the state of Maryland, and even from the county. But we don't know exactly where the timing of all this is. So while we did our initial tranche of $25,500, we're going to take a little bit of time right now and assess what the government response is going to be, so we can fill the gaps. We're concerned about the gaps when it comes to services.
And there will be some.
There will be some. There is no doubt that there is going to be gaps. And we want to be there to respond to those gaps. So we want to make rational and well-founded decisions. So we're going to be releasing funds as we go along, but we're going to take a little bit of time right now to assess the situation and put money in where it's going to be needed.
Well, so that's an instance where the fact that the United Way is known, that your local efforts are known and widely respected, that you're known, that there's obviously support from a variety of community resources and leaders. I think people are willing to grant you in a way that might not be true for another organization or something that was just created. The opportunity to take the time to be careful, to be rational in your application of these funds, and know that it's going to be done properly without having to know every detail right now. I think.
Well, thank you for saying that, because that means a lot. I think we worked really hard over 80 years to earn the trust of this community, and we're going to distribute these funds in a clear and transparent way to ensure that it's having maximum effect in the community. Now, I said we might take our time, but I will say this, and this is a big but: if there's a need that springs up that has to be resolved right now, we're prepared to spring to action, and we will.
Well, and there probably will be. I mean, as you said, we don't know exactly how much is going to come from the federal government and when. We also don't know exactly how all of that's going to be targeted in the long run. I think we can make the same assumption about the state funding and state efforts. You hope that they're creative and substantial, and that we can get ahead of this problem. And the same can be said for how capable the county will be at providing what kind of a response with what level of resources. So I mean,
I think the $25,500 that we've already distributed may give a flavor to the community of how we expect some of these funds to go. So let me give you an idea of what those funds, where they went. Great. So a significant portion of funds went to the Mental Health Association of Frederick County. So they've got a huge challenge in front of them. They operate the local 211 for Western Maryland.
Right.
They have been inundated with phone calls. And when you get inundated with phone calls, you have to increase your manpower. When you increase your manpower, your costs go up. So they had an immediate gap right now. We help them get through 2 weeks of payroll, so that they continue to provide that incredibly important information from 211. The Religious Coalition starting tomorrow, I believe, Wednesday. You'll probably won't, this will have happened by the time you air this.
This will be aired on Thursday.
This will be aired. So yesterday, they are opening the YMCA camp in your neck of the woods, Kai. What is the name of that? Westmar.
Oh, okay.
Right next, not that far from your home. Camp Westmar is going to be opened as an emergency family shelter to Religious Coalition. That property is owned by YMCA, but Religious Coalition is using that as a emergency family shelter for homeless families. That facility is largely up and going, but they had an immediate need. There was a broken HVAC system there that needed to be replaced. That needed to be done right now. We gave that funding over there.
I think these are great examples, because in both instances that you described, you're really leveraging a lot more support for the community and resources by making something possible that might not otherwise be possible, that other people are already engaged in, or to extend their capacity to do it right now in a timely way for these targeted populations. So we want to try to keep these shows a little short, probably a little shorter even than this may have already been, but this is a new process. I really appreciate you being a part of the first time. I mean, we're going to figure out the glitches and try to make things work a little smoother, and get my home office cleaned up and everything. But you want to share the URLs for anyone who's interested in looking on the web, or a phone number if they want to call, anything that you can, and we will put that information in with the link.
So similar to many businesses, we are not going to the office right now. So the best way to give is to go online at uwfrederick.org /COVID relief, and that will take you to the giving, directly to the giving page. You can also send a check to P.O. Box 307 in Frederick, Maryland 21705.
And if folks go to the United Way website, unitedwayfrederick.org, they'll find links to some of the
right away. There's a take action banner right on the front page. You click that and it'll take you right to the giving page. Okay,
great. Well, we hope that it's not too long lasting, but we're living in a very different world. I appreciate my dog wants to go out for a walk. But I appreciate you taking the time to do this from your home. You're staying at home. I'm staying at home as much as possible. We're encouraging, obviously, everyone else to do that. It's very important. That's not what this show is about, but I can't sign off without taking the opportunity to say we are all in this together. And anybody who studies the way this works know that it's critical for us to flatten the curve, to reduce the rate of infection, to make sure that we are not overwhelming our local medical resources, personnel, beds, hospitals, ventilators, personal protection equipment, everything else. If it's you, your mother, father, your grandparents, any older relatives, anybody else who might get this, the last thing in the world any of us want is for somebody to have their life or health jeopardized because there were too many people using the system and there weren't enough medical personnel available, ventilators or anything else. So in this first show, I know it's not directly related, although I guess it is in a way. I just wanted to take the opportunity to emphasize that point.
And please, Kai, if I may, if you have the capacity to give back to your community, please do so. And if it's not through the COVID relief campaign, then please give to your local charities.
All right, because it's worth noting, while a lot of people are hurting, and they're going to be hurting in many ways or have their jobs or businesses jeopardized, there are also many people in the community who will come out of this just fine economically. And in fact, a lot of them are spending a lot less money than they might normally spend. And so one way I've been encouraging people to think about it is, think about what you would have been spending eating out or going to a ball game or any number of other things in this last few weeks and in the next few weeks, and take that money, for those of you who can afford to do it, and direct it back into your community. And this is one of the ways that they can do it. And on a final note, I just want to point out that the painting behind me was done by Goodloe Byron, one of my favorite local artists. It's a couple of beavers that he did on a commission because of the beavers we have living at our place. And when Ken saw that, he pointed out, if you want to switch the screen for a moment, there you go. With just the slightest move, we could have had two Goodloe Byron paintings in the background at the same time. So thanks again, Ken. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.